Welcome to today's Explainer. Today we're stepping back in time to June 3rd, 2026. We're looking at a historical weather event that literally altered a community forever. This isn't just your standard recount of wind and rain. No, it's a deeply solemn story about the terrifying, sheer might of nature, and really the fragile reality we build right in the middle of it. The sky changed that day, and honestly with it, so did countless lives. So let's dive right in and look at exactly what happened when those clouds rolled in.
Okay, let's actually start with a really haunting sentiment directly from the survivors themselves. They said, it wasn't a storm, it was a catastrophe. Wow. That's a chilling hook for the story we're about to unpack, right? The people who actually lived through this, they aren't using basic weather terms. They're using words of profound loss and absolute shock. It really sets the stage perfectly, showing us that what was approaching their village was entirely beyond anything they'd ever experienced.
Section 1. A normal morning. The deceptive calm.
It's crazy, but every great tragedy almost always starts with the mundane, and this day was absolutely no exception. The morning of June 3rd started just like any other. The air was calm, daily routines were humming along, and there was this warm, idyllic peace that completely lulled the entire community into a false sense of security. But what's really striking here is how rapidly the day deteriorated. I mean, nobody could have predicted this. We go from a completely normal morning to a slightly windy noon to utter, complete devastation within minutes, and finally, just quiet horror hours later. The sheer compression of time here is staggering. It wasn't some slow build over a few days, it was an abrupt, violent shift that caught literally everyone off guard.
So let's picture what that deceptive normalcy actually looked like. Farmers were out in the fields, working the land just like they did every single day. Kids were playing outside, their laughter filling the air. The markets? Bustling with that typical, energetic morning vibe. And yeah, sure, there were some clouds in the sky, but they seemed totally harmless. Actually, scratch that, they seemed like normal summer clouds. Absolutely no one looking up anticipated the horror that was approaching. They all just thought it was another typical day.
Section 2. A terrifying scene. The escalation.
Now things pivot fast. As we crossed into the afternoon, that gentle morning breeze began to just absolutely howl, violently stripping away the calm. First, these incredibly strong winds started to roar, totally drowning out the normal sounds of the village. Then, massive dust clouds rolled in from the horizon, literally swallowing the sky whole like an angry demon. Finally, a sudden, suffocating darkness dropped right in the middle of the day. The environment itself turned hostile in just a matter of minutes.
And the intensity of nature's wrath here, it was relentless. Pure chaos. Massive trees, we're talking trees that had stood there for generations, were violently uprooted right out of the earth. Tin roofs were ripped from houses, sent flying through the air like deadly projectiles. Power poles came crashing down, instantly cutting the community off from the entire outside world. It was a rapid-fire, non-stop barrage of pure, unadulterated destruction.
I mean, can you even imagine the sheer terror of that moment? The accounts we have paint a terrifying, overwhelming sensory picture. There were screams everywhere. The deafening, cracking sound of breaking trees and falling brick walls just echoing through this unnatural darkness. Villagers were literally running for their lives, blindly trying to navigate the chaos while their homes and livelihoods were battered all around them. The scale of the fear, it's just unimaginable.
So, was it just a storm? As the metaphorical and literal storm finally began to subside, the survivors were left in this heavy, dramatic silence to grapple with that very question. A normal storm passes and leaves puddles, right? Well, what they had just survived felt like something much, much worse.
Section 3. The aftermath. Surveying the ruin. As the violent winds finally calmed down, survivors hesitantly, carefully stepped out of whatever shelter they could find to face the harsh, sobering reality of what nature had left behind. And the accounts brilliantly illustrate the sheer scale of the loss here. Just think about the sharp contrast. One moment, we have the vibrant life from right before noon, farmers working, kids playing, and then, just hours later, the absolute devastation left behind after the storm. Ruined crops, uprooted trees, completely destroyed homes. The difference between those two realities is just a few terrifying hours, yet it feels like two entirely different worlds.
The physical aftermath detailed in the sources is just absolutely heartbreaking to process. The roads were completely blocked by these massive fallen trees, isolating the villagers from any immediate outside help. The fields, which literally represented months of the farmers' hard work,
Their food, their future survival were totally ruined, wiped out in an instant. The very landscape, the actual face of the village itself had been fundamentally altered forever.
Section 4. Human Spirit and Nature. The Human Spirit. But the story doesn't end in the wreckage. While the tragedy was profound, it immediately gave way to an incredible, resilient response. This community, despite losing almost everything, absolutely refused to be broken by this disaster. They didn't wait around for help, they became a lifeline for one another. First, they focused on helping each other, making sure everyone was safe and cared for. Then, they united to actually start rebuilding homes straight from the debris. Finally, through sheer grit and determination, they slowly brought life back on track, side by side. It's really a beautiful testament to the human spirit.
So we are left with this one crucial realization from the survivors. It wasn't a storm, it was a catastrophe, which made us realize the true power of nature. This leaves us with a really profound thought to deeply reflect on. We build, we plan, and we go about our normal, mundane mornings, but we exist within the undeniable, terrifying power of nature. So what does it take for a community to survive the unimaginable? And honestly, how quickly could our own deceptive calm be shattered?